I think one important thing to distinguish is we see labor violations in cotton production around the world, unfortunately. Um, but Turkmenistan is a state imposed forced labor system. And that means that companies can't do due diligence. They can't take measures themselves to segregate, their corner of the supply chain from the rest of the state imposed forced labor system. Sustainability initiatives like the Better Cotton Initiative can't work in Turkmenistan. There can't be any kind of way that a company could use non-forced labor cotton coming out of Turkmenistan. And that's really different from, a country like India, which is a major cotton producer. They obviously have some labor violations, including some forced and child labor in cotton production. But we're talking about, hundreds of thousands actually of farmers producing cotton in a very diffuse system in India. So a company, could understand its own supply chain and ensure that the labor used in its supply chain met standards. You can't do that in Turkmenistan. I mean, it makes a huge difference when companies not only exclude forced labor goods from their supply chain, but are public about that. Companies that want to be proactive should sign the Turkmen Cotton Pledge. They should commit not to using Turkmen cotton in their supply chains while it is produced with forced labor. And then they should commit to making sure they're not doing so by really mapping their supply chains down to the raw material level. Where they are third party platforms, they need to be doing full due diligence on their suppliers to make sure that their suppliers are not sourcing Turkmen cotton goods. And they can engage with us and with our Turkmen partners directly. I mean, this is 2023. Children should not be working in hazardous forms of child labor, the worst forms of child labor, carrying heavy loads, being exposed to chemicals in the cotton fields. This is considered a hazardous form of child labor and is prohibited. What we really want to see are a set of reforms and policies and tools to keep children at school and not in the fields. But in Turkmenistan, one thing I think that is important to know is that the system of forced labor that mobilizes adults actually spurs child labor. Even though the state is not mobilizing children, adults, teachers, medical workers, other kinds of people who receive a salary from a state agency or a state factory are forcibly mobilized to pick cotton or to pay for a cotton picker out of their own pocket. So that's sort of a penalty. They can either pick or they can pay. Many people would send a child in his or her place. So a parent who is forcibly mobilized to pick cotton might send a child to the field, or children who are in situations of poverty and seeking to earn money might work as a replacement picker paid by an adult who is forced to pick cotton and pays for a replacement. So kids are working actually not involuntarily but to make money, and that kind of child labor is driven by the forced labor system. Firsthand testimony from Turkmenistan, one of the most repressive countries in the world, is incredibly hard to get. And we have really excellent Turkmen human rights defender partners who've been doing this work for a long time. They have networks of monitors inside the country who work undercover. Some of the monitors are in forced labor themselves and are able to report directly on conditions. We train them, our partners train them how to collect information accurately and safely, but they do it at tremendous risk to themselves. That in itself is groundbreaking. And I just hope that, brands and retailers, international organizations that are investing in this system and investing in trying to change this system understand what an important contribution our partners have made, that we wouldn't be where we are without that work.